High against the storm clouds of a Kansas spring, an unexpected bird rides the wind. Until recent years, you wouldn't expect to see a mature bald eagle in Kansas at this time. They'd be far to the north rearing young. But that's the exciting part. This eagle is a resident, nesting in the same place in southeastern Kansas for the past 6 years. It's one of about 40 bald eagle pairs now nesting in the Sunflower State, a welcome event that began in modern times in 1989 at Clinton Reservoir. Wildlife lovers have long admired bald eagles as they wintered on Kansas marshes and reservoirs. Once rapidly disappearing from the lower 48 states and listed as a federal endangered wildlife species, this American symbol often followed geese and ducks from their far northern homes. Open water in Kansas provided the bald eagle's principal diet, fish and waterfowl, and this provided birders a rare winter look at these majestic birds before they returned to the north. Now, bald eagles are making a strong comeback, and Kansas resident eagles are growing in number. Even so, observing a homegrown eagle nest is exciting and provides a close-up viewing opportunity of these still rare Kansas pioneers. Bald eagles mate for life and build huge nests that they add to each year. Nests are almost always near water and usually found near reservoirs or large rivers. This nest along Fall River was about 70 feet high in a cottonwood tree. Surprisingly, it was near human habitation and the nesting eagles were tolerant of nearby activity. Like many raptors, nesting bald eagles get an early start each year. Egg laying in Kansas can begin as early as late December, well before the weather warms and before trees leaf out. But the majority of Kansas eggs are laid in February. Usually, 2 white speckled eggs are laid. Incubation lasts about 35 to 40 days and is shared by both parents, though the female spends more time on the nest. Since nest duties are shared, both adults normally hunt for themselves during this time. Eaglets hatch several days apart in the order that the eggs are laid. The tiny birds are covered with white down and constantly attended by the female. Now the male takes over nearly all hunting responsibilities for the family while the female guards her young. She broods and keeps them warm, feeding them tiny bits of meat torn from prey brought to the nest. Adult eagles move about the nest with their talons balled into fists to avoid harming their young with sharp claws. The eaglets grow rapidly, gaining a pound every 4 or 5 days. At 2 weeks old, they can hold their heads up and feeding becomes easier. At 3 weeks, they are a foot tall and their feet and beaks are nearly adult-sized. The adult female now resumes hunting to help with the growing family, but a parent usually remains near to defend the nest. The young birds are soon covered with gray, woolly down that helps them stay warm. At 4 weeks, they can stand and feed themselves by tearing apart prey left in the nest. If food is scarce, it's not uncommon for the larger eaglet to kill and eat its sibling. Adult eagles make no attempt to stop this if it occurs. At 6 weeks, the young are nearly adult-sized and black juvenile feathers grow in. Now the young eagles have voracious appetites and the adults hunt nearly non-stop to feed them. They readily tear apart their own food, swallowing some prey whole. The young are alone in the nest most of the time. When feathered, they begin to test their wings on gusts of wind, often stretching and even soaring momentarily above the nest. They take their first flights when 10 to 13 weeks old. Mortality among first-year eagles is about 60 to 70%. This nest, successful in raising 2 eaglets for the past several years, was not so lucky this time. A strong thunderstorm in late May blew one of the chicks out of the nest, and it was presumably lost in the river below. The remaining eaglet grew through early June, watching with keen interest as its parents flew overhead. It became increasingly restless to learn to fly and hunt on its own. A fox squirrel living precariously close to the maturing bird was in danger should it make the mistake of crossing the nest. The young eaglet fledged in mid-June, taking several flights and returning to the nest each evening. But on the third day, it crashed into a nearby power line, killing it and wiping out this nest production for 2010. Early flight is the most vulnerable time. As many as 40% of young eagles die on their first flights. But the nest remains, and chances are good that these adults will try again next year. Adult bald eagles live up to 30 years. Reaching sexual maturity at about 5 years old, that gives them many opportunities to raise young. And slowly but surely, the Kansas eagle population continues to grow. Watch for these magnificent birds in our Kansas skies. I'm Mike Blair in the Kansas Outdoors.